Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Enlightened Conversations, where we invite our hosts and guests to share their views on the world, work, and their personal lives in an enlightened way. This season, we're also looking forward to engaging more with our audience, hearing your enlightened views, and answering questions and topics you would like us to weigh in on. Today's episode is hosted by Michelle Lightworker. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another conversation of Enlightened Conversations. I'm Michelle Lightworker, and I have the wonderful Davina Herbert joining me today. Welcome, Davina.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, it's going to be really great to hear more about what you're up to with the pet energy therapy. And for those of you who don't know Davina's been doing pet energy therapy for the last 15 years. She's also got a new book coming out, which we're going to talk about, and it's called Dancing with the Dancing Doll, and it's also a program. So I'm excited to dive in to find out a bit more what the Dancing with the Doll is. And Davina's also studied crystal therapy, aromatherapy, card reading courses, Reiki, theatre healing, and access consciousness. So it's really cool to have you on the show, and I'm really looking forward to hearing so much more about what you're doing and your approach. It's very exciting.
Thanks. Well, like I said, thanks for inviting me on. So my vision for the world is a world where animals are recognized for the sentient beings that they truly are.
Yeah.
And that we can create a world where there's more equality. Look, I'd like to see a totally equal world, but, that's obviously going to take a piece of time. So I'd like to see then a world that we're moving towards that. Because to me, so the book Dancing with Doll, the subtitle of that is Accessing Animal Wisdom.
Yeah. Because
there is so much wisdom that those guys as sentient beings can share with us. But the key is we have to ask.
Yeah.
And then the other key is we have to be open to receive the information that they're willing to share with us.
Yeah, so I agree with you. And I feel like too that animals I've written about them in one of my books that I wrote for Lightworker practitioner training. And I talked about spirit animal guides. I talked about totem animals, which is our totem, represents our energy for this lifetime. I've talked about animal spirit guides. And then you've got our pets that cross over. And I feel like there's all these different energetic messages that we can be getting from animals. So many archetypal energies that we need to embody. There's so many personal messages, especially if our pets have crossed over. Hey, and there's also that whole when I kind of arrive here, what is the energetic vibration that's going to be supportive of my journey here, like a totem as well. So there's so many, isn't there? And also the other thing is that as you was talking, that came through for me is that even on our walks and our nature visitations and anything that we do in our life, we get animals come to us and we can actually ask, like you're saying, what do I need to know? What does the message does the universe have? And it's like they're conduits for that energy as well. So there's so many different things, isn't there, with animals?
There are. And look, hey, what you're saying is that's the way I see the world. And my tribe are also going to be the people that see the world the same way. I know that's not everybody. There's some people that just go for instance, I'm into horses. And when I first had a horse, I was in a stable environment. And
as in the stables?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
A stables, because we weren't on acreage. I wasn't on acreage at the time. So I had to just her at a stable. And there was somebody at the stable that for this person, the worth of the horse was whether they did or didn't do well at competition. I mean, we're only talking low-level competitions, we're not talking, international competition, just little local shows and stuff. And that was the sum total of what the horse was worth. I mean, if you win, you get a ribbon that's like what, 50 cents at the shop, like, you know. So for me, it was a good experience being in the stables, because you got exposed to different people, and you can sort of like, with everything in life, you know, you can sort of like pick and choose. Okay, yep, I like the way that person interacted with the horse or what they did there. That doesn't work for me, so let me leave that aside. So it is good interacting with people that aren't always necessarily on your same path, because you can go, oh, okay, yeah, yep, right, that's a different point of view. It doesn't work for me, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me go over here and play over here with these other people that have different points of view. So
I agree. And I think my engagement with animals has changed over time, you know, as well. Like when my kids were little, we had a menagerie. Like we had guinea pigs, we had peach-faced lovebirds, we had a cat, a dog, we had ducks, we had chickens. It was just like we had a little menagerie, right? And I felt like that was good for us then, like from the point of view of, I guess, education for kids, understanding how the world works, having conversations about feelings, because, you know, when you can see an animal reacting, you can depersonalize it to a point that a child can understand, because sometimes they don't get how they're feeling, but they can understand how an animal would be feeling. So they develop that empathy. Yeah. And then over time, I even worked as a counselor. I was actually working at a cattery. I had cats on the same property in a cattery that I was working at. And so I would take the kids over and we were doing counseling sessions. And if they were having a hard time talking or things like that, we'd go and take a walk to the cats, and we'd talk about how the cats might be feeling and how they were interacting. And often you'd find out more about their story, because the kids would open up about how they felt in their home, about different dynamics, but projected onto the cats, and you could kind of tell it was quite obvious, you know. And then about like my kids grew up, and then now I'm in a unit, and I feel like I travel more. I don't really want pets, and, you know, to abandon them really. And also when I go for walks, I don't really like it when dogs are on leads, because I feel like they're being controlled. You know, there's kind of stuff that I have, and I turned vegetarian 3 years ago, sort of from more a health point of view, but then that's evolved into I don't want to eat these beings anymore. So it's like I had this kind of, and I loved, you know, sound terrible now, but, you know, I just loved crunching on chicken bones. I wouldn't even give it a second thought in my 20s, you know. So I think there's just such an evolution of a relationship that it's almost like, I would say, yes, I'm way part of what your tribe is now, but back then I just wouldn't have been, I guess. And I think there's always that, isn't it? Like for people, they're on a journey with these relationships, aren't they?
Well, it's like all of life is a journey, you know, like even just talking about food, like, you know, I remember when I was a kid, my parents tried to get me to eat avocado, and I don't true. Avocado. I eat avocado, you know. I sort of like, the taste works for me now, and I sort of see that it's a nice addition to my diet. So, you know, like just total sort of like, you know, 180 from where I was. But like that's all of life. Like we wouldn't really want to be back where we were when we were in our 20s anyway. Like, you know, like life's about that whole, or for me anyway, that whole growth and evolution. And you know, to me, like my life has changed my worldview has changed so many times. And, you know, something new comes into my path and I'm like, oh, so the world looks like this. And then you're like, oh, okay, maybe it looks like this. And
it's so true.
and you sort of keep looking. And sometimes that's hard, because sometimes you go, like, you know, there've been the odd things like you sort of go, oh my goodness, that is completely sort of like my view of the world is completely sort of changed. How do I cope with that? And it's sort of like, do I actually want to embrace this change or do I not? You know, so it's a matter of, oh, yep, okay. And sometimes you have to think about it. Like one of the things I mentioned in the Dancing with Doll book, like I attended I think it was they called it Raja Yoga or something course, like probably back when I was in my 20s. and they were talking about like basically self-responsibility and creating your own life. That's how I would interpret now what they were saying. And the topic got brought up. So how do bad things happen to good people? And they were sort of talking about, well, how do we know what people's life lessons are? It's their journey, it's ours, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I did not go back to that. Like, that was the first lesson of however many. I could not go back to that because I'm like, oh my God, that is terrible. Bad things happening to good people. No. That's a really bad thing. Fast forward many years, you know, I watched my father with a degenerative disease. I watched my mother has a degenerative disease right now as well.
Yeah.
Their journey is not what I would wish for them, but it's their journey, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And all I can do is go, sometimes it's harder than others, but send them love and go, okay, that's their journey. Like, I would see them as good people, yet their journey, particularly at the end, is like, man, that sucks, you know.
I know, right? And it does bring out whatever life lessons they need to learn. I know Mum passed, you know, like I say recently, and it's going to be 2 years in June. It just feels like yesterday, to be honest. But yeah, like her chronic illnesses towards the end, I mean, they were so educational for her to teach her certain things about herself. And we, you know, can't judge an illness by its cover. Sometimes illnesses are the catalyst for change. And I know your horse had an illness that you had helped them through. Is that right? After you'd had some illness yourself, and then you'd helped them by applying some of the techniques that helped you. Is that right? Am I getting that right? And that helped you get into the pet therapy?
Yeah, one of the horses early on. So I had in my kind of time gets a bit sort of messed up, but I think it was like about my late 20s. I developed chronic fatigue syndrome, and I had to find ways to move through that and get past it. And I always knew I was going to recover from it. Like, it was just a matter of how long it was going to take. Now, it took longer than I would have liked. It was about 5 years or something. But I guess at no stage did I ever think, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, because I'm like, yeah, this is just a phase I'm going through.
Yeah.
But as a result of that, Western medicine really wasn't all that helpful for me to move through it.
Yeah,
so
right.
Then I started to look at what alternatives were out there. So I looked at herbal medicine, which was a huge, huge help to me. And the herbalist really helped with my mindset. He actually helped me to bolster that thought that was in my mind that, yes, this is just a period of time.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
I am going to get past this. So interestingly, one of the things he encouraged me to do was not to go to a support group, because they had chronic fatigue support groups.
Okay, yeah.
He encouraged me not to go to any of those, because he said, you're going to be mixing with people that probably don't think they can get past it. And so you need to just do your own thing, you know. And so I guess that's also been like a life lesson. Like, what pool do you want to play in? Do you want to play in the pool of people that go, let's just swim in this pile of poo over here? Or do you want to go in swim in the pool of people that go, yeah, we like to swim in clear water where we can see what we're swimming in. And
I'm very similar to that. I must admit. Well, you know, went to thousands and thousands of meetings for recovery from my eating disorder and stuff like that, but always found that I would gravitate towards the groups that would be focusing on like the steps of the program, the solutions, the the real positive stories. And I think that definitely in a group situation, like, you can choose to be in a miserable group, that's for sure, or not. And that's great. So sorry, go on. I concur with that. I'd rather swim in a pool rather than shit.
Exactly. You know, so anyway, so as a result of all that, I also then from the herbal medicine sort of branched out, and then that was when I started to look at crystals and aromatherapy and cards, because when I'd grown up, it was like, oh, tarot, oh, that's, a bad thing. But by this time, of course, there were angel cards. I'm like, oh, they're so much softer. And
yes, they are a
started
bit.
with the angel cards, and then sort of, moved on to, like, one of my decks now is a horse deck,
Nice.
got all pretty horse pictures in it. It's like,
yeah.
So, and then I got also interested in more the hands-on modalities, such as the theta, the Reiki. Or theta, I guess, is more a bit of changing your beliefs, but I did the medical intuitive part of theta healing, and then the Reiki and the access consciousness. And access consciousness is also about looking at your mindset and your belief, and asking yourself questions about, hey, this has happened, what's really going on behind this, like, because sometimes it's like, oh, okay, we kind of think that maybe this looks like a pimple, that's a bit weird, but underneath there's something underneath. And if we can get to see what really triggered us, and we can shift that, then we can actually create more and for ourselves. So and Access also has a lot of hands-on body processes. So I started out leasing a horse, and this horse actually injured her leg one night in her stall, and the vet came out and looked at her and said, oh, we don't have a mobile x-ray machine, so all we can say is her leg is injured. You just need to keep her confined, so she's not moving around, as minimal movement, and then she needed antibiotics and stuff like that. But what that incident, what that brought up for me was like, hey, I'm using this hands-on healing stuff and clearing some beliefs and doing stuff for me. What about I use it with this horse? So I did.
Why not?
And at the end of the 6 weeks, so the vets luckily never actually x-rayed the hoof, which was good, because that didn't create any, to my mind, that didn't create any sort of preconceptions in people around me about what was really going on for this little horse. But at the end of that, her hoof was totally sound. But she had a really, but I spoke to her, and I'm like, okay, I can do these hands-on processes for you, and we can do some belief work, and, make sure that you have the mindset that's the most conducive to you being healthy. Are you up for this? And she was up for it. So it's like, okay, let's do it,
and it's interesting because, we think animals can't talk, but if we only ask those questions and then be willing to listen and be receptive with all of our faculties. So whether it's our heart space, our body, is our body saying yes to, the answers coming through, are they a yes or a no in our body as we look at the animal, or can we hear them actually on an energetic level, or is our third eye able to see it, that yes, in their energy, or we just know it's a yes. I think that's very important for people to understand, is animals are communicating with, really, aren't they? I mean, they're communicating with us all the time, and it's just a matter of us asking the right questions sometimes, and then just being a willing recipient to listen to what that answer and truth is.
It is, and like, people receive their messages differently, whereas some people are more auditory and they will hear something. Some people are a bit more visual and might see the answer, or more feeling and might just feel it in their body. So, it is knowing, and sometimes people, it can be a combination of, one day you feel it, one day you hear it,
Yeah, absolutely.
It is knowing, hey, what is this for me? But the way I talk to people about it now is, the way I see it, we're all energetic beings, and our first language is energy. So we all speak the same language. As humans, then we've gone on to make English our primary language, which in some ways has put us behind, because often we then sometimes don't listen to our intuition and we go more on the words. And, you know, like you sort of say to somebody, how are you? And they go, oh, I'm good. Well, you know, in the English words mean, hey, everything's hunky-dory. But then when you listen to the tone and you sort of look at their body language and you sort of feel into them, you know, yeah, actually it's not, you know.
Yeah.
So animals just go straight to that, looking at your body language and your energy, and they're not caught up with, well, the words you're using are saying, you know.
Yeah, they just know, don't they? Just take one look at you. Like, you know what's going on with you. So why can't we do it? Why can't we do the same with them, you know, in that way? Like do the more, you know, without the words, just take it all in and see what they're really telling us.
Well, one of the things that I do say, one of the things I talk about in the book is when working with horses and clients, because I had a program that I used to teach called the Walking Tall program. That's now part of the Dancing with Dole course, as the Dancing with Dole course aligns with the book that's coming out in early April. And so now the Walking Tall has just, that's now just part of Dancing with Dole.
Integrated. Yep.
Yeah. But in that part, when I had people, so that was that part's more hands-on with horses and people, not riding per se, but just being around the horses and in their energy and looking at what lessons being around the horse can teach them.
Yeah.
So, but one of the,
it develops that sensitivity, that's for sure. There's no doubt about it. Like, you know, I'm just putting myself in your energy of what you're talking about, and I'm seeing somebody who's not usually receptive become much more receptive and much more intuitive because of being willing to be in the energy of the horse. You really do need to kind of settle and be open and listen and breathe, and don't you? Like, it's a different vibe.
It is, and so the horses can teach us so much. And that's how the whole book came about, because like my mare Dole, she's taught me so many life lessons. Like it wasn't just about riding, it's about life. And so that's how the book came about, to share the life lessons. And look, primarily they're the lessons from Dole, but there are also other animals that I've worked with, and some of them have been like our own animals as well. But it's like, what life lessons can we learn from the animals? And one of them is about sometimes like before, we have that incongruity between what we're saying and the feeling that we're projecting out. And so what I say to people when they're working with, particularly when they're working with the horses, if you feel frightened, own it and ask the horse for help. Like if you go, oh yeah, I'm fine, everything's fine, and yet your whole energy is like, oh my God. You know, that's a bit of a
that can freak out a horse.
It's just like a bit discordant,
incongruency. It is.
So
and it's like when we're not owning that's a good example of when we're not owning our own current state of reality and emotional feelings, that what happens is they spill out. And because animals are so sensitive, that they will feel them and they will act them out, and like a child will act out your feelings. And that's why I was always really mindful when I was counseling adults and children, to help them to learn to own their feelings, because I was concerned for their pets. Like if they came in and they said that, oh, my pet's really struggling right now, I'd be like, okay, let's look at what's going on with you, or another family member at the moment that could be contributing to that mess, because that's often what happens. Not every single time. Sometimes there are transactions that we need to walk through that teach us things about lots of things, but there is that, isn't there, that the animals are so open and on the astral plane that they just absorb it quite quickly.
Yep. And so when people, you know, and that's even what I write about in the book, like, you know, when I was going, oh, doll, you're being such a rich today. What is going on with you? And she looked at me and like, yeah, back at you. And then I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay. So what?
That look they give you. I can see it now.
So, you know, I had to then look at what was going on for me and own it, you know, and then often I would apologize to her later and go, you know, hey, look, you know, I'm sorry I got cranky because, I recognize it's not about you. It was about me not owning what was going on for me. So.
Yeah. And I think that's really important for people to hear is that, yes, we are walking around unconscious sometimes of how we're feeling, what we're doing and what our energy is doing. And I think when we are able to make an amends to our pets, it's a really powerful thing. It might sound really stupid to some people. Oh, yes, sure. Apologize to your pet, like they'd understand. But what you're doing is far more powerful. You could be healing your pet by taking that back, owning it, and they're not having to carry it. And it really liberates them and frees up their energy and makes them like a happier pet or animal or therapy, wherever you are.
Yes, exactly. And it's about taking responsibility for you, you know. Hey, I was walking around with my cranky pants on, you know. And I'm you might have been a really valid reason for that. But then when you look at it again, it's like, how long do I want to keep the cranky pants on? You know, do I really want to keep in that space? Or, you know, how far is this taking me? At my essence, I am love and lovable, you know, and if I'm walking around cranky, then I've taken myself away from the pure essence of who I am. And, you know, the animals, you know, indeed all of nature as well, is love and lovable. And so, you know, if I'm walking around, like talking about so much of nature around and animals around us, how many times do you go for a walk and there's maybe this pretty little bird who's flitting around and singing and good morning, it's morning. In our current society, we're all so busy, we're either on a screen and we're walking around looking at that, and we're not looking at what's around us. We're not engaged with our own world. You know, so our animals are there to remind us, hello, would you like to engage again? You know, look at the blue sky. It's beautiful. The green trees, you know, the blue of the water, the beauty of the birds singing. You know, there's so much beauty and wonder around us. But often we are too distracted by what is by modern things like the looking at computers and mobile phones and stuff all the time, which takes us away from our intuition. You know, it's I
think like the world becomes more magical when you choose to notice what's like really around you and what's communicating to you. It actually becomes really magical, and it forms a real bond and a more of a connection with spirit, you know, and the universe and your heart space, as you know. So tell me more about like your book and why you wrote it, what its, you know, what its purpose is. Love to know that.
So I wrote the book. My mare doll, she passed in end of September last year.
Oh, okay.
And we'd been together for about 15 years. So sort of around the time she's been around for most of pet energy therapy sort of time. So I'd had two people say to me, because for me, it's interesting. Writing is something I've resisted a lot throughout my life. When I was at school, writing was so easy for me. And yet over the years, I've resisted it chronically. And I've known there have been books there that, you know, are waiting for me to bring them into the world. And it was just like, okay, and I've had a few goes, but then I've put the projects to one side. So two people told me within about the space of maybe about a month or so to write a book about the business. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. But then somehow that morphed, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's about Dole and her life lessons that she's taught me, because that enables Dole to live on. I mean, Dole's spirit is still around anyway, but then Dole's message can get out to more people via the book. So within a month, I'd settled down, written the book, and sent it off to a publisher for a read review. And because, you know, you sort of think, oh, I don't know, is this any good? Will anyone want to read this? And the feedback I got from the editor was, wow, this is great. Maybe, you know, tighten up a couple of chapters. But yes, definitely, this is a great book. There's lots of, because there is, like, it's, like I said, it's somebody I was talking to about the book, and they said, oh, I don't have a horse, so, you know, I wouldn't get your book. But it's not like, whilst a horse is featured prominently throughout the book, it is really, what did she teach me about life? Cool. And
all those lessons.
Yeah, and like, you know, there are other horses, there are some client animals. Sometimes those situations might have been changed a little bit, just because, you know, of privacy. You sort of I might, you know, have made the situations a little bit vague, because obviously you want to respect everyone's privacy. So but yeah, it's about dogs, you know, and life lessons from them, and also respecting them. Like, you know, I can actually hear my boy in the background.
I was just about to say, oh my God, what timing is that? Like, the dog is coming right through.
Yeah, so I've got one under the desk here, one behind the desk over there, and then, you know, the one at the front door. And I say that's my office team. Like, my office team is Dole, is still, you know, part of my office team. And it's the three dogs as well. So, you know, we sort of, Dabrowski tends to come and go, being the male. Sometimes he wants to hang out here, sometimes he doesn't. The girls hang out with me most of the time in the office. So
I'm getting is a little bit more protective of the outer space, and the girls are more protective of your inner space.
Yes. And like I said, I've got a new little puppy, and the little puppy is under the desk, so I can't stretch my feet out too much. But one of the things I talk about in the book is Dabrowski and Lou. They're the older dogs. They've been with us for about 6 years, and actually probably it's a bit longer, because we've been here just over 6 years. Anyway, we'll say, you know, say 7 years. And when I first got them, I took Dabrowski to obedience lessons, and we ended up obedience school dropouts. And because on the last day of the first class we went to, he had to drop to, like, he did everything else, and he needed to drop to pass to the next class, and he wouldn't do it. And the judge instructor, or the actual class instructor, said, I've seen him do it, I know he can. And the judge was saying, well, I've got to see him to actually, for him to pass. So, you know, no, you can't. We could have done a bridging class, but I'm like, you know what, we're over it, let's just not do it. But when I reflected back, I actually wasn't being very respectful of Dabrowski, because they had a rule that you had to feed them like 2 hours before class or something, like, obviously because they don't want the oval full of droppings. And that particular night I was running late, and so the dogs didn't get fed before we went to class. I had my dinner, but they didn't. And Roosker was just, you know,
ready.
He was just like, talk to the poor mama.
Yeah, ready. Yeah.
And when I reflected on it, it's like, well, hey, I was willing to have my dinner. I didn't go to class without dinner. And it wasn't really fair to him that I asked him to go to class without dinner. So, you know, I get why he didn't, do it. And it really was a perfectly sort of reasonable thing to express,
Yeah. Bit of rebel coming through.
Look, he is a little bit of, and look, we encourage that in all the animals to, express their own personality, because I don't want a cookie cutter animal. I don't want one that's just frightened and will just tell me what they think they want me to hear. I want one. And that was like with Dole, always encouraged her own personality, for her to be, might not always have agreed with her, but always encouraged her to have her own personality. Like, when she didn't laugh at my own jokes, I was like, Dole, obviously, what's wrong? My jokes are
eye roll. It's like,
and then, and she'd walk off. And I'm like, Dole,
that's
Oh, really, Mama?
Yeah.
So
they keep it real, don't they? They're like,
they do, and it does also make it more funny when they walk off and go,
yeah.
Really? What are you drinking?
Yeah, and so great. I'm so excited about your new book, and you're bringing through all these life lessons. So it's a really personal book, and you've also integrated some of the teachings from the program. Tell me more about that too.
So it's morphing and changing at the moment. So
as books do, and as information does, I know, I get it. So totally get that.
So what the first part of the new revised Dancing with Doll course is, I'm offering a 3-month course in April, May and June, and that's based on some of the lessons in the beginning part of the book, talking about confidence and intuition, and just sort of like being, grounded in yourself. So that's a 3-month journey with that one. It's all online. So to make it easier, people don't have to travel.
That's awesome.
And then there's a Facebook group to support everyone for the 3 months. So there's 3 group meetings, and then there's 3 one-on-one meetings to further explore what the theme for that month is. But these are all based on like living your best, most authentic life, being the leader in your own life. All the stuff that Dolls taught me about how to show up for myself. I can't really expect anyone else to show up for me if I'm not willing to show up for me.
It's true. And it changes your relationships too. When you start to show up for yourself, it's when people don't show up for you, it's extremely, it makes an impact. Like, it's not something that we accept as okay anymore, whereas in the past we might have. And when people don't listen or show up for us or care, we might have gone, oh well, not even thought about it. But when we start to show up for ourselves and we're energetically connecting and really there for ourselves, that's when I think we start to, I don't want to say command like an availability from people. It's not from a command place, but it kind of feels like energetically our energy is commanding it. So because I find we repel people that aren't there for us. It's like it's not even like we're trying to make it happen. Does that make sense, Davina?
Yeah, totally. It's really like, I guess, attracting your people who are heading in the same direction with you, and those that aren't just tend to fall away for whatever reason, because they think you're cuckoo, or could be a
number of things.
They just the times don't mesh up to meet those people anymore. Or,
it's true.
Like when you do meet with them and you're like, oh, well, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just going through a phase. I'll meet with these people. And in your gut, it's not in your best interest.
Yeah.
But you feel like you should and you meet up because
through.
this is my friends for 500 years. I have to meet with them, and then you meet with them and you're like, I'm so bored.
It's not that, that's not that sort of it's like this, isn't it? Like that infinity bounce thing where if you're being fed but you're giving at the same time. I mean, it is like that. It's not. I think in the early days of my own realizations on how much I hated myself, I expected someone else's love to give me that, so I didn't feel that. I think then that when that changed to, look, it's actually great loving myself and I'm really loving it. And then I really noticed it when somebody wasn't turning up for me. And then I met my third husband in 2007, and it was just this natural feeding thing where they had sort of been single for a couple of years, dating and things like that. But and I was looking at sort of not dating, not being in a relationship for a couple of years, but it was so natural, so that thing that, because he was a giver too, we're both givers a lot in relationship, and often they say opposites attract, and on some levels I think opposites may attract, but because they're teaching you lessons and they're helping you grow that aspect and you're attracted to that because you want more of that in your life, and that's fine. But in that situation, I think it was kind of the first time I was really with somebody who was as invested in giving as I was as a person. And I think that was the right timing to step in, to lean into a relationship. So we've been together since then, and married 2 years after we met. So I kind of feel like that's a really big part of my journey that you've been talking about. And I just wanted to share that.
Well, it is. It's like that simultaneity. As you gift, you receive, and as you receive, you gift. So it's like it's never about you. And that's what, like, I tell people that, like we were saying before, that come to me with the cat and go, well, the cat's waking me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, it's never it's never just about the cat. And in this particular case, the cat was worried about the owner crossing over, so so the cat kept waking the owner up, concerned that they were going to cross over. So so we did and that's what I tell people, like, there's some things like you need to respect the animal's DNA. So like a dog is a dog, they're a hunter,
and they got like a group consciousness. Like, I know they've got their own individual personalities because they've come through for a reason. I think as a soul contract to connect with you and to grow and things. I think there's a lot of that, but I also feel like there's this like I do agree with Rudolf Steiner when he said there's catness and there's dogness, and that's their ness. That's their, how do I put that? What you said. What did you say again? Their
that's their like their DNA. That's like who they are, and you need to respect that. Like, I can't expect, whilst horses and dogs have a lot of similarities, like they're both herd animals, but the difference is like a dog will often run, stay and fight, whereas a horse's first response is to fly in terms of if there's danger. So that's something you need to always respect. Like, our horses are in the paddock, we feed in the paddock. So I have to always remember our horses are really good guys. Like, they know us, they respect us, but I have to always remember they are flight animals at the end of the day. If I'm feeding a horse and standing right in front of them, they're probably not going to run me over because they know me if something happens. But do I really want to be in the position of testing that?
Exactly. Respect, respect the energy.
Yes, you do. And you need to be aware. Like, that's one of the things that I say, like, when I'm in the paddock with the horses, and like I said, because we feed them, all together in the paddock, you need to be aware of, you need to look at the herd dynamics, they have a hierarchy and a structure. You need to know who can push on whom, like this horse is more dominant, they can push on that one. So if you're feeding down from that one, where are you going to stand, where is going to be the safest? And often I've got the dogs with me as well, like 99% of the time I've got the dogs with me. So I'm looking at where we all need to stand to keep all of us safe, horses, dogs, and human. But but it's also, like I said, it's respecting that a horse is a flight animal. They will tend to maybe run if they get scared, or if they're dominant and they're wanting feed time, is a lot of movement. I can't ask the horses to change that. That's who they are. That's part of their DNA. So I would never ask them not to run over me. But it's like respecting what is part of their generic makeup, that it is not okay to ask them to change, and what things are around the sort of edges that you can ask them to change. Like that cat I was talking about before, it was concerned for its human, so we did some negotiations saying, hey, this particular person was an early riser. Instead of waking a human up at 3 a.m, worried that they're going to pass over, now the human is aware of that. They've taken that on board. Can you maybe go push that to 5? And then they'll wake you up, and then they'll do breakfast and happy days. And that worked really well. So it was respecting that, the cat was worried for the human. We'd communicated the message, and that was understood. But hey, can we push? And that was an easy one, that we could push that boundary a little bit. They're going to get up around 5 anyway. Just if they don't, break them up at 5. But it was not asking the cat to not wake the human up, because that was something that they felt they needed to do. So it was honoring who the cat was and what they needed to do, but also allowing the human to get a good night's sleep too. So
that makes a lot of sense. And so what is the most exciting part of your new book that you're, if it makes your heart sing?
Well, it really is about sharing the animal wisdom, getting that out there with people, because there's some people that they're going to read the book and they're going to go, oh, I knew that. I knew my animals had wisdom to share with me. And then there'll be some people that'll go, oh, I never thought of that. Hey, let me start to, because like I said, my vision is of a world where we are looking at the animals as sentient beings. And it all starts with us. And I guess that was really where the book started. It's like, you know what? I need to stand up. I need to say, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. This is the world that I would like to live in. Because I can't complain if I'm living in a world I'm like, this world sucks, if I'm not willing to stand up and go, hello, this is what I believe in. So
that is so awesome. I love that. And it feels like that. Often we think that when our pets pass over, like they're gone, like I'm not saying we don't grieve them, because we like to have them around, and their energy and their presence is so powerful when it's around us, especially when we've got a close relationship with them. But what I think is beautiful about, it's so lovely. I feel a little bit teary saying this, but with Dole and her and the passing there, and I just feel like the messages are they live on, and our pets, if they haven't been able to communicate things with us while they're with us in a physical form, it doesn't mean that we can't access those things now. And I feel like it's a beautiful gift to her, that back to Dole, that you're doing this book by saying, I value your wisdom. And it's also like a legacy for Dole.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like Dole's still here with us, in a very powerful way through your book.
Look, she is, and the book is dedicated to Dole. Because she was the driving force behind it, and as like Dole says, of course, all the good ideas come from Dole. And Dole is definitely still with me. Like I had a session with a client not long after Dole passed, and I was still dealing with some of the aspects of the grief of it. And Dole came through really clearly, and she's, you know, was telling me, you know, are you listening to what you're telling the client? You know,
yeah, cheeky.
Yes. No, come on, you really, yes, okay, I need to concentrate on the client now. Yep. I get what you're saying, Dole, and I will, you know, process that, because there was parts about Dole's passing that, you know, I was feeling guilty about. And the universe is absolutely amazing how it works, you know.
Yeah.
But still dealing with the grief over Dole's death, and probably not so much, I guess, the grief, more the guilt of all the should haves. I should have, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then the universe brings me this client just, you know, probably I think it was like maybe not even 2 weeks after Dole passed. And the client was dealing with grief over the death of an animal. And so, you know, obviously I start tuning into the energy, talking to them, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, Dole pops up. Hello. Are you listening?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Dole. Yes, I'm listening now. So, you know, so it's, to me, energy is energy, and that Dole is no longer in a physical body, which, you know, it means I can't pat her anymore. I can't ride her anymore. And so that they were things that, you know, hey, I would like to still be able to do. But Dole had some health issues, and it was time for her to leave that body. But I still have her energy with me through the life lessons that she's taught me, through the book, which will then get shared with other people, and then also just, you know, because Dole's spirit is still with me. So
yeah, that's beautiful. I had a dog, Puck, a little tan coloured dachshund cross Jack Russell. So he was like just a little bit taller than a dachshund, so short hair, and I had him from 1996 to about 2008, so quite a long time. And he often, like, he had a walk about him. So like when we were walking along, he'd often, he had this walk where he'd like walk along, and then he'd skip a walk, like he'd skip his little back leg would skip, you know. And often when I'm going for my walks and I see a dachshund, I'll be thinking of him, and then the dog skips, and I kind of feel like they do channel their energy through to other animals around us too. Have you ever felt that with you know, after Dole passed, if you had that experience?
Not through other animals per se, but I have had, it's interesting. I had a conversation recently with somebody about animals, our beloved animal spirits coming back into different bodies. And I have felt for some time that the older dog, she reminded me, I had a dog, like I've had dogs since I was 3 years old.
Gosh, this was my next question, so it's funny you're talking about it now, so that's amazing.
Yep, picking up on it.
Yeah.
So I had a dog, Coco. My parents got her when I was 3 years old, and she was a great girl. Each dog that I've had has taught me more about dogs and dog ownership, and then each one has pushed the boundaries a little bit more about, you know. So Coco was actually a dog, and she had to live in the laundry downstairs, and you know, but when I've looked at Lou, I have often felt I can see Coco in her face.
Yep.
And so then when I was talking to having this conversation recently, then I was like, okay, I've felt that, but I've never actually addressed the energy and said, hey, you know, is the same energy of Coco also there in Lou? And that was what I got, that it was. And like just with Dole, for instance, I felt that we'd had a lifetime in Ireland together. So I would often talk to Dole in Gaelic, because I learnt Gaelic for fun, you know, because I actually have Irish heritage on both mum and dad's side. So I learnt Gaelic for fun, and I would talk to Doll in Gaelic, and ask her how she was going, and call her my friend. Like Anamkara is soul friend. It's a Gaelic term. So I, just to honor, because I felt that, we'd had that. And Jabuski, I feel like we've had many lifetimes. Like he is my boy.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be more my boy if he had two feet instead of 4 paws.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? And I think, that's interesting. It's like they come to help us grow. They come to help us serve us on some other soul contract level. And just because they're gone now doesn't mean we won't see them again, like even in another physical form, this lifetime, another lifetime. And I think that's why they are so precious to us. Animals are so precious to us. And I'm so excited about your messages, what you're doing, your work. It's fantastic. I'm enthralled about the program that you've got running. And where can people find you so that, if they want to connect with you, they can, easily access all these things that you've got on offer?
Yep. So thepetenergytherapy.com is my website. So that's thepetenergytherapy.com. And then I'm also on the socials. YouTube, I actually don't do much on there at the moment. But Facebook and Instagram are sort of the other main ones that I'm on. So Instagram, it's under I think it's actually Pet Energy Rules on
Pet Energy Rules. Oh, I love it. Yeah.
on Facebook, because I could change the name. So I'm like, oh, it's fun.
It's nice.
And that then connects to my Instagram account as well. So
awesome. Well, look, we'll be looking forward to seeing your book come out and celebrate with you, celebrate with Doll. And it's been beautiful chatting with you and having a lot of the confirmations that I felt, that I just feel like it's really good to have things validated and confirmed when it comes to this arena. And I've certainly valued working with pets and in a relationship sense. And I know, and I feel like if I'd had the knowledge that I had now back then when I was doing private practice with my counselling, I probably would have focused more on the development of intuitive abilities and things like that, which you're obviously doing, which I commend. I think it's fantastic work, Davina. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's always wonderful to, talk to like-minded people, and as you exchange ideas, you sort of validate each other, and it's that whole gifting and receiving, like we were talking about before. I learn from you, you learn from me, and it's we all then learn more that we can then go out to share with other people. So
absolutely, exactly.
Our world will expand. So.
It's exactly right. So we encourage you all to do the kind of things that we're doing. have those conversations that validate yourselves and make you feel like your soul is growing and enriched. So thank you again, Davina, and we'll see you all next time on Enlightened Conversations. Bye for now.